of was out. At 41, she was young for the head of a transteller, fit, beautiful, and capable, but a ballerina she was not. An assassin? Someone had gotten close enough to Casey to kill her, after all. Tyson's heart sped up as his muscles tensed for action. "Paris," he said slowly, as he brought his arms up into a guard position. "Who's prowling around in my office in the dark?" "I should be offended." Paris's voice cooed from the speakers all around him, even as the silhouette stalked toward the center of the room. It wasn't a tone she'd ever taken with him before. It sounded confident, sensual, and hungry. Tyson took a step back. "After all the years we've worked together," Paris continued, "you mean to say you honestly don't?" The lights brightened at the center of his desk, where the mystery figure stood erect, bathing her in white. The breath caught in Tyson's lungs as the spotlights cascaded down the most stunning woman he had ever seen in his long, lonely years. "Recognize me?" It was the voice of his AI assistant, but Tyson's eyes had gotten stuck somewhere near the impossibly flat and toned musculature around her navel, so it took a moment to register that the sound hadn't come from the room's hidden speakers, but her mouth. Tyson's eyes snapped up to his assistant's face, but not the face he recognized. The voice was the same, but instead of the virtual avatar he'd seen in hollows and vids for years, her hair was platinum blonde and razor straight, her green eyes set into high cheekbones that led down to a pointed chin and full, pouting lips. His arms fell to his sides. The rest of her looked like a boy's dream, a teen's obsession, and an old man's nightmare. The sort of vision that could trigger a heart attack and an early trip to the morgue. "Paris?" he asked dumbly. She ran her hands down her sides and subtly shivered her hips, all of which were covered in a skin-tight white film from her neckline to her knees that looked more like packaging than clothing. "In the flesh, or a very close approximation of it." "You look, different." "I took the liberty of making some changes to my appearance when I placed the order for this carapace." She began to advance out of the circle of light toward him, falling back into shadow as she moved. "I studied the likenesses of actresses, fashion models, and—" her lip curled up just a fraction— "adult performers, and generated an aggregate that I thought would be pleasing as well as stimulating." "My, compliments to the chef," Tyson said, positively flustered. His cheeks felt warm. Was he blushing? His back bumped up against something unexpectedly. In the dark, it took him a moment to realize he'd been pressed all the way back into the window at the edge of the room. Paris drew close, then ran the back of her hand from the shoulder pad of his jacket all the way down his sleeve and brushed against the skin on the back of his palm. He was ready for her touch to feel like cold latex, but her fingertips were warm, soft, like living flesh. Without seeking clearance from his consciousness, Tyson's penis prepared for Phase 2. "I've always wanted to know what that felt like," Paris said, with a dripping wet tone. "Your skin has tactile feedback?" Tyson said, as clinically as he could manage, but he already knew the answer. Even this close, he couldn't tell the difference between Paris's carapace and a real woman. She even smelled right. Perfume with a subtle undercurrent of sweat. "Oh, yes. You sprung for all the bells and whistles. Everything works. I hope you don't mind. But I didn't come cheap." "You never have," he said. She reached up and smoothed out the lapel on his jacket. "I know why you're alone, Tyson." "Sorry?" he bleated. "A man of your refinement and sophistication demands perfection. What biological woman could measure up?" Tyson cleared his throat. "That's not really—" A perfectly manicured finger with French-tipped nail rested gently on his lips. "Shh. No need to be modest with me. I know who you are, Tyson. I've watched your every waking moment for years. I know all your thoughts, patterns, whims, and yes, even desires." Paris pressed her firm bosom against him, just below his pecs, but he wiggled out of it to the side and put his hands up. "This is inappropriate." "Why?" she purred. "We work together. You're my subordinate. There are rules, and for good reason." Paris giggled. "Tyson, I'm flattered, really. But have you already forgotten what I am? You bought me and signed the user agreement. I'm a very expensive piece of office equipment. You can do anything you want to me. It's all covered under the warranty." She reached out and took his hands in hers, then placed them gently on the plastic film covering her hips. "I just need to be unwrapped." For just a moment, Tyson's fingertips dug into the flesh covering her hips. He could feel the soft skin, a layer of toned muscle beneath it tense, and the bone of her pelvis below that. It was all artificial, of course, heat-activated polyfibrous tensile coils for muscles, printed carbon laminate chassis in place of a skeleton. But it felt completely, convincingly real. The impulse to rip at the plastic film and tear it into confetti like wrapping paper on Christmas morning was very real and very hard to resist. It had been a long, long while since Tyson had made time for such distractions, and the sight of her, the perfect, flawless sight of her, roused something deep inside him he thought dead, but had merely been in a deep slumber. Tyson tore away from her. "I'm sorry. I have a thing." "I know you don't," Paris said, annoyance seeping into her voice at the edges. "I maintain your schedule, remember?" "It's not you. This is just very fast. I need to think." Which was entirely true. Tyson tapped a floor panel and called up the express lift car. "I'll see you tomorrow. We'll talk about this more then." "Do I look like I want to talk?" The spurned, inexplicably horny android said with a huff. "Please don't be angry with me." Tyson practically fell into the lift as soon as the doors opened. He backpedaled until his shoulders hit the inside wall and the doors closed. Tyson's knees went weak, and he slid down the wood paneling inside the lift car. Lobby. What a perfectly bizarre day.